All right, we are live. Just the two of us today for now. Adam has a sick kid, so hopefully the kid will feel better soon. Adam, Rubinho's internet has just died last minute. So to all those people that I said I would use you as a backup, I'm sorry that I'm not, given that we've just had it happen within moments of going live. So apologies. Craig, you are here. How are you feeling after a tumultuous week as an Albion fan?
Yeah, it's not been ideal. Me personally, I'm good. But yeah, the results have been less than optimal. But yeah, how about yourself? How are you?
Yeah, likewise. Still coming off the COVID route.
Oh yeah.
But we're getting there slowly but surely. It wasn't helped yesterday. Thank you, Brighton. You made it a real sad time. But I think, unfortunately, one of our biggest talking points today, not just because of what we saw on Wednesday and Saturday, but around the league as well, we're unfortunately going to have to revisit our friend VAR this week because we set the bar really low with VAR. It feels like over the last couple of months and years, but we seem to have gotten and found a lower route yesterday with the Liverpool Tottenham game. Did you catch any of what was happening there? I'll kind of explain what happened to the listeners / viewers afterwards, and then we can kind of tie it into the myriad of strange decisions in the Albion games as well. But what is going on here?
Well, I don't know. I think listeners that have listened before know our opinion on VAR and where we stand with it. But this weekend seemed pretty odd, even for VAR itself. And then if you tie that in with the lack of VAR from the Chelsea game, then we're in this sort of weird space of, you're damned if you don't use it, but damned if you do. And for me, it just comes down to the officiating itself and not the technology. But yeah, some context on the Liverpool stuff, because that's like a next level, right? That's an immediate apology and a complete mess around that just is incomprehensible even to the slowest walker.
Yeah, so to talk about it just a little bit, because it's so outrageous. I know this is a Brighton podcast, but ironically enough, we've been on the end of decisions this mental against Spurs of all teams.
Spurs last year, yeah.
But so this is what happened with the Luis Diaz goal, which Liverpool had disallowed. I should probably have that in captions as well, versus Tottenham. So obviously there's going to be a lot more come out on this as the days go by. But in simple terms, the VAR took the wrong on-field decision and it led to the goal being disallowed. So Darren England on VAR, who has now since come out, by the way, and has came out that he refereed a game in the Middle East in midweek without any exemption, which is even dodgy. Like, so much dodgy levels to everything. I think he refed a Saudi league game, who obviously own Newcastle United, so there's no controversy there or conflict of interest. But Darren England checked offside, thinking the on-field decision was a goal. So I don't know what they're watching up there, but he assumed that the on-field decision was a goal. It was a quick offside check because it was clear Diaz was onside. So he told the referee, check complete. In telling the ref check complete, he's saying the on-field decision was correct. Well, the on-field decision was that it was offside. So the human error by the VAR team is getting the on-field decision wrong. It's not that they failed to draw lines. They were drawn. Diaz was onside. And he said, just check complete. And he got it wrong as to what they were doing on the field. Like, it's such an unbelievable error, like misunderstanding what was said and done on the field at the time. Like, what? I just, like, do they not? I'm sure they have at least two people in the booth, don't they? Like, how are we coming to these decisions over and over and over again? Like, it is... I can't believe that we're leading off a Brighton podcast with two games to cover, and I'm starting with Liverpool Tottenham because it was that diabolical that, like, we just have to talk about it.
Yeah, egregious. Basic communication, right? And you're talking It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And the more I think about it, the more just stupid it becomes. In just saying check complete, or what did you actually rule it? Like it, but even then it's like, oh, we got that wrong, we need to go back, right? Surely it's a case of, oh, I thought you meant this, so we should probably change that. Instead, he's just kept his mouth shut and gone, oh, we got that wrong, never mind. Let's see if no one picks up on that. It is baffling to me that you can have that sort of level of a communication error between officials that have clearly worked together for a long time because they've got each other's backs. We know that. But then also just not go back and go, oh, I thought you meant it wasn't, or I thought you meant it was a goal, so that's why I said check complete. Let's just go back and change that quick, because that's obviously going to hit us. So it's just weird. I don't understand either the process involved or even the reaction, and justifiably so. A Brighton podcast leading off with Liverpool Tottenham, as you said, but everyone needs to be talking about this and just saying how bad it is, because this is next level bad. We've had our communications, and we've had our rants and we've had our opinions on it, but this takes the cake.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a friend earlier, and I feel like this makes the Mount Rushmore of VAR decisions, and like a bad VAR decisions. One of them, of course, being the Brentford Arsenal game, and the other one, like, inevitably being the Palace Brighton game, right? Like for now, like, they are your three etched in stone, like egregious to the points of like just insanity levels of errors. And to tie it back into the Albion, let's talk a little bit about Wednesday night. It was a game that suffered greatly from a lack of VAR, which is even more ironic, isn't it? Because
it's so strange, so weird. Yeah, here we are, like, begrudging the whole concept and protocol of it, and as a result, like, from Wednesday's game, we're talking about a potential second yellow card. We're talking about all of these little different bits, and it's like, oh, if only we had VAR. But then it's a double-edged sword, because they'd still get it wrong anyway, even if we did have it. So it's odd, but there was a couple of points in that match where VAR could have got involved, and obviously it isn't available during the cup,
which is mental, really. I understand that it's for like, obviously lower league teams are playing in this competition, but as far as I'm aware, they also wrongly, in my opinion, have it be the case in the FA Cup, where if you have a VAR capable stadium, it runs, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm not sure why, when we're sat at Stamford Bridge in a Carabao Cup game and we're not utilizing VAR at all. And for the record, like they should have had a goal too. That goal wasn't offside. So I'm not saying it to benefit just us solely. Like, obviously before that, they are down to 10 men if VAR is used correctly and they don't score that goal in the first place. But like, that's two decisions there that have totally changed the game, really. Like, and both of them, I think, just exposed how bad the referees are without VAR, which is terrifying. And Stephen in the chat saying there's nothing wrong with VAR brought in to stop human error. Sadly, VAR is being used by humans, which is ironic. And like, you're right. And the thing is like, they're all that it's ran by the same people. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why have we not looked into this? Like, everybody's saying it. Like, why are we not looking into the idea of other people coming in totally unrelated to this system and running their own VAR setup? Or like, you really do bring in ex-pros, and like, obviously you don't have Gary Neville refer like VAR in Man United game, but like, you know what I mean? Like, but then at the same time, why not at this point? Like, if we're mocking the thing that much in case, like, why not just make it even crazier?
Yeah, and just a polite reminder that there was an opportunity to use the semi-automatic stuff that we saw in the World Cup and other international tournaments, but it was ultimately voted against using it. So that's just the cherry on the cake for you as well, is that this could have been better. It was just vetoed by the people now running VAR.
Yeah. Let's talk Chelsea Brighton, because
do we have to?
It feels like it's not often under De Zerbi that we've had to talk about two losses in a row. It feels much more like a Graham Potter type conversation to have. And ironically enough, it was like watching a Graham Potter side against Chelsea. It felt like at times a team that looked like they should have scored 2 or 3 and scored none, because they decided they simply weren't going to get anything on target that night. It was just crazy to me watching that team and the opportunities that Robert Sanchez of all people presented and us failing to take any kind of advantage from them.
Yeah. It's just a case of finishing, right? And like you said, it is a very Potter-esque type deal that we're talking about here, where, you know, it can't hit a barn door, really, especially with the João Pedro chance, and I think it was Fati as well. Yeah, it's just two shots on target from 13. That's not good enough. Sanchez made a couple of saves, sure, but ultimately there's a few goals that should have been had there. I think we were talking about it at halftime, where, you know, you take one of those two chances in that first half, and you kind of cruise after that, because Stamford Bridge gets on the Chelsea back because they're not doing too well, and you kind of just ride that home. But we made it difficult.
Yeah, we really did. Let's talk a little bit about some of the players that played on Wednesday night, because there's some of them that have been obviously part of the rotation. That's definitely something we'll talk about here shortly. But let's talk about some of the less good ones. Buonanotte, still only 18, was in the midst of taking himself out on loan before Enciso got hurt. Obviously, that just put a stopper on everything until Fati came in last minute. And then I think there was obviously that case of trying to find in the right club and just stopped already. And everything went wrong for him, basically, in terms of trying to get him to a place where he could succeed, like some of our other loanees. And he is still here, and he got his first start against Chelsea. This is a player that just looks like he's desperate for a proper loan move, isn't he? I heard someone, I'm not sure whether it was in a group chat, or Twitter, or someone said that it might have even been one of you guys. We should have sent him out on loan and kept Sarmiento. What are your thoughts on that and Buonanotte in general?
I think you're right to an extent. It sounds like the plan was always for there to be a loan, right? So I think we were all agreed that a loan where he could cut his teeth would be perfect. It's just unfortunate that injury happened and someone had to go. Sarmiento was already gone. Do you know what I mean? So like that sort of, stuck between a rock and a hard place there is we need cover, but we can't send you. But we know you need this, but we can't give it to you. So, and it is a really weird halfway house. It's harsh because he's 18 years old, right? We're very lucky with the 18 and 19-year-olds that we have in this squad with Ferguson and Enciso. That should not be the bar for our teenagers coming through. So it's very easy to compare him to the Encisos and the Fergusons of the world. But you just have to remember those are elite, and Buonanotte needs time, and he maybe need an extra year. Very similar, and I think this is mentioned a lot of times, similar to Alexis McAllister, where you need a year, maybe a year and a half, really to bed in, adapt. This is an 18-year-old human being moving from Argentina to the south coast of England. Like, it is going to take time. So it's one of those things. A loan would have been perfect. At the moment, he's cover for us. I was surprised to see him start because I think the general consensus is that he's not as good as Solly March. He's not as good as the other options we have. And that was quite evident at Chelsea, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was. You're totally right. The Alexis McAllister comparison is a good one. He was basically anonymous for 6 months when he was playing for us, and then all of a sudden started to gain his way into the team, bulk up a little bit. I mean, we all saw those hilarious interviews of him basically just saying how much he hated being here during the pandemic and all the stress and stuff that come with it. Who was the other one who said they wanted to die?
It was Buonanotte that said that.
Buonanotte. Yeah, so we obviously know he's having an absolute rough time of it. He's a player that I think obviously if someone gets hurt, we're going to see a lot more of. But for now, it's something that we're just going to have to keep an eye on. We're adding Rubinho to the chat. He's here. He's alive, just about. Is his internet? We're about to find out. Robin, First question for you. 1, how are you? 2, Mo Dahoud. Good, bad, somewhere in the middle. Where do you stand on Mo?
Firstly, internet is all right, I think. Had a little bit of a wobble, a defensive wobble, but we're all right. Dahoud, somewhere in the middle at the moment. I think it's far too early to write him off. I've seen a little bit of that on social media, but that's par for the course. But on the flip side, I've also not seen a huge amount to enthuse me. Odd silky touches and passes here and there, but I think he's a fair way away from being a unquestionably easy for me to say Premier League starter. That's where I am on him. Somewhat on the fence, probably then.
Great.
I do like him. I do. He's sort of, but he doesn't fit this one bucket of a central mid that you need. You've got your combative Balibas and Caicedos that brings that sort of energy and dynamism, but then you've also got the box to box midfielders that provide a goal threat, and he's not really that either yet. So it's where are you? And I think he's a very good player, obviously, and he links play up really nicely as a central midfielder that sort of dictates the tempo, but he doesn't have that physical element to him, nor does he really have that goal threat at the moment. So you kind of have to bring one of those to the table in order to succeed in the way that we play and maybe the way that we do things. At the moment, nice, silky. Probably a little bit harsh, but he feels like a little bit of a luxury player to me too, where you have your fundamental centre mid next to him in a Gross, Gilmore, Caicedo, Baliba, whatever. He's a complement to the dynamic centre mid that we need, and De Zerbi said that we need, right? So the jury's still out. I can't be too harsh. I think he's a good player, and I think he'll get better with time.
Yeah, it's a position that De Zerbi has said is the hardest for any player to learn in his process, right? And it's probably not going to be helped by rotating constantly. 39 changes in 5 games now per Andy Naylor. That's a lot. There is not really any team out there other than Manchester City that can rotate in such a way and continue to get results. And we are starting to see that come through for the Albion, right? Like win, loss, win, or whatever it is, like win, loss, whatever. 3 wins from our last 6. And we're starting to see those defensive cracks, especially come in. Not so much against Chelsea, but I think that's more because Chelsea are a dire football team, more so than the Albion being rock solid at the back on Wednesday night. As we saw on Saturday with probably a better back 4, we were ripped apart by Villa. The amount of changes we're making, De Zerbi has said that they've been very clear from before this season even began that this was going to be his hardest year as a manager ever, to learn and understand how to manage a squad in Europe and in cups and to be competitive in all competitions, essentially, and to continue to be a good team in the league, right? Which, as we've seen throughout decades now of football, teams that qualify for Europe for their first or second time tend to struggle massively to continue to be a force in the league, or they're shocking in Europe and continue to do okay. There's no in between. They seem to all really struggle. And we are starting to see those struggles really come to the fore for Roberto and the side. Now, my take on this is I think our biggest issue is obviously defensively. I'm not shocking anybody after a 6-1 defeat. I think we've conceded 16 goals in September, not sustainable. But the fact of the matter is we need to, if we're going to tinker, we need to tinker with that front 5, not that back 5, or rather front 6, not our back 5. Do you feel the same way? Do you both feel the same way? And like, what are your thoughts on what we're starting to run into? And then secondly, if we're all in agreement that we need to be more consistent at the back at least, what is our best back 5 in your opinion? And we'll start with you, Robin, because you've just popped in. Big question.
Yeah, firstly, I am in agreement. I think back 5 needs to be a lot more consistent. I know obviously we've had the odd injury with Dunk and obviously Estepinian being knackered coming back from international duty, so it's slightly been enforced. But I think the overarching point about making so many sort of adjustments game to game is that previous partnerships that were really solid naturally will start to get weaker because they're not being played together as much. So you've got that. You've then got the fact that some partnerships are then going to be totally new, whether that's in defence or central midfield or wherever else. and then you've got other partnerships not having enough time to develop because you're having to rotate. And I think those three issues impact the whole team, but they are seen much more acutely in defence, because it's almost the same as a goalkeeper, right? If a goalkeeper makes an error in a game, it's a goal. Similarly, if you've got a defensive unit that is all over the place, more than likely that's going to have a more negative impact than the same situation further up the pitch. So I think it's more important that we have a settled back five. As to what the settled back five is a very difficult question. I'm going to have a stab at it. I think De Zerbi needs to hang his hat on Verbruggen being number one. And my first choice back four it's really difficult. I mean, I think a lot of people would probably agree that Estupiñán, Dunk and Veltman are probably three of our best back four. The other central defensive slot is up for grabs. I'm still too annoyed with Webster to be able to think about putting him in there. I don't know. It's a straight shootout between Van Hecke and Igor at the moment. I know we've seen a little bit more of Van Hecke than we have of Igor. Slightly unhelpfully, I'm going to say that probably Van Hecke is a better out-and-out defender from what we've seen. Igor's probably more comfortable on the ball, but you've already got that with Dunk. So it's probably Van Hecke for me as the fourth, just because you've got Dunk who can be the slightly more comfortable on the ball, and then you've got Van Hecke to fall back on. So Estupiñán, Dunk, Van Hecke, Veltman, and Verbruggen would be my first choice back five.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty close to what I would think. The times that we've seen Igor play, he's actually been quite good. It's been unfortunate around with everyone around him and sort of this defensive frailties that we have and this constant rotation that maybe paints him in a slightly worse light than he should. I'd be interested to see him alongside Dunk, and just see how that goes. It'll be very interesting. But Veltman definitely at right back, Estupiñán definitely a left back. He hasn't been great the last couple of weeks, but we don't really have another left back, so that it's kind of just, that's it. And I do agree about Verbruggen, right? If that is De Zerbi's choice of goalkeeper to bring in, then you should go for it, right? At 20, 21 years old, if he's your goalkeeper for the future and going onwards, then great. Give Steele some time in the cup, give Steele some European time as well. That's where I see it. With the chat as well, Veltman at centre back is also viable. I think Lamptey still fits the system. I know we just talked about how good he was at left back and how he deputized, but as a regular starter week in, week out, I'm too worried about his injuries and him running himself into the ground. So it's definitely Veltman over Lamptey for me. I think we've got better options at centre back than putting Veltman there too. I think his best position is right back.
Agreed.
For us, for another team it might be different, but for us, he's much more presentable at right back.
Agreed.
Thoughts on Igor into a defensive midfield role with Gilmour? What would you have felt? Well, how would you have felt if you'd have seen Igor line up next to Billy Gilmour yesterday?
Probably slightly happier than I was to see Hinshelwood, to be brutally honest. I mean, that's not a slight on Hinshelwood. It's more just that, yeah. I mean, it's the kind of John Stones scenario, isn't it? That's happened for City over the last year, 18 months or so. I don't know. I mean, it's a bit of a left field shout, but he's comfortable on the ball. He obviously has very good vision. We've seen some of his passes. The passes that he's attempted have been good. Perhaps he would feel a bit more comfortable knowing that he's not the last man. He's got a bit of backup behind him. It's not a horrendous shout. I wouldn't be totally against trying it. Annoyingly, probably Wednesday night would have been the game to try it in. But obviously, we got to see Baleba instead. Yeah, I mean, it's not horrendous because there is clearly a lack of someone that can do that defensive midfield job. And, Hinchelwood looked very neat and tidy. He didn't do a huge amount wrong, other than a really annoying daft foul in their penalty box in the second half that was just a bit needless. But he certainly didn't stand out as being horrendous. But at the same time, do I think that those two, that you ever want to see Gilmour and Hinchelwood side by side in a Premier League game? Not for a long time, I don't think, to be quite honest. So that's a long way of saying, yeah, I wouldn't mind Igor being tried in that position, but I'd much prefer Baleba is fast tracked in, because I think he looks great from what we've seen. He obviously just needs to get up to speed a little bit.
Yeah, that was going to be my next piece as well, was just talking a little bit about the debut of Carlos Baleba, because I share the sentiment that I thought he looked excellent. He obviously, De Zerbi has said he isn't there yet, and it's difficult for him to continue to, they're having to change things around because they've lost Caicedo, and Baleba isn't quite there yet as the player that they need him to be, which is fine. We can't expect him to slot in that quickly. But he was very good on Wednesday night. Defensively, he was up there with your opinions.
He was excellent. He was excellent. And he was knackered. I don't know, because I was at the game. I don't know if it came up sort of on TV when he was taken off, but he was absolutely shattered by that point.
I mean, that's his first full 70 minutes for a long time, right?
Yeah, we were saying, he came on as he either played or came on as a sub for Lille, I think, in their first league game of the season.
Yeah.
But other than that, so you're talking, that's still basically 2 months, near enough 2 months. So I'm not surprised that he was absolutely shattered. But yeah, it was noticeable that the last kind of 5 minutes before he came off, he was looking very, very leggy. But there was I noticed a little bit of that Caicedo kind of trait of, it's not the same telescopic legs that Caicedo's got, but he did have that ability to, if someone got past him, you can tell that he's going to have the ability to track back and probably more often than not, win a decent tackle. And we saw that in the Bournemouth game, didn't we? Very briefly, with a tackle that was pretty crunching. A side point, he's lucky not to have been unbelievably hurt by that tackle from the Chelsea player on Wednesday night, which I don't know has contributed to him looking slightly worse for wear in the second half. But yeah, I mean, I've seen enough of him that I think he's going to be, once he gets up to speed, you'd like to think him and Gilmour will be the kind of shoe-in partnership.
Yeah, it's another 18-year-old, right? Like Caicedo's 22 now. He's got 4 years to get to that level. Like, it's kind of scary how comfortable he looked in the middle of a park against Chelsea, who are not, on paper have a very good midfield. But I think you covered it already, Robin. Like Gilmour and Hinchelwood, Stephen in the chat saying that they just seem weak physically, which is probably why we're talking about putting Baleba in there instead, who most certainly did not look weak. James as well in the chat, he would have to say that 6th in the league, 3 points off top spot, and with the Europa still to play for is well worth the occasional battering. Good.
Oh yeah, I said that.
I think we're going to see a few of them, so I'm glad you feel that way, because I think with the rotations being enforced against us, we might see a couple of horrible results.
It was really bizarre. Like, I woke up this morning and I felt like I wasn't really even that pissed off about yesterday, which is really bizarre, because normally when you lose 6-1, like I think the last time we shipped 6 goals was West Ham away in their last season at Upton Park. Well, not me. They're in the Championship, and that was dreadful. Like, that was a game I nearly walked out after 15 minutes because we were like 3-0 down after 12 minutes or something, and that was woeful. But yeah, yesterday, it's exactly the point in the chat, and I said it on WhatsApp to you this morning, which is like, the fact that we are all scrabbling to try and get tickets to go and watch the Albion play Ajax away. Repeat that, Ajax away in Europe. I'm absolutely taking the odd battering for that to have come true. Like, let's be honest, if you're offered that even 12 months ago, it's a ludicrous scenario 12 months ago. And right, it might not ever happen again. This might be the European shot for us. So yeah, as a trade-off to be where we are, I mean, you still won 5 of 7, right? in the Premier League, despite all of the rotation, all of the getting used to playing Thursday, Sunday, or Wednesday, Sunday, or Wednesday, Saturday, whatever it is. Despite all of those changes, we've still won 5 out of 7. So yeah, absolutely, the odd battering is going to happen. And if you look across all of De Zerbi's games, they averages 4 goals a game across his 30 odd 39 games in charge, whatever it is. It's going to happen, and the sooner you get zen about it, the better, because we are going to batter teams as well. It's going to happen probably more often than we get battered ourselves. We're going to dish out the same sort of result to somebody else.
I mean, we've scored 19. We've scored 19 goals this season. That's more than anyone else in the Premier League, and we've conceded. We've scored 19 and we've conceded 14. Which is only better than Burnley, Bournemouth, and Sheffield United, the bottom 3. So you can't say you're not going to have some fun. You're going to see goals when you come and watch Brighton.
We knew this before. Like, as soon as De Zerbi was mooted to be the manager, everyone was like, "Well, there's going to be loads of goals."
One way or another.
So it is. So yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it all day long.
So next question, and this is brought up by Arctic Temper and Craig. I'd love to hear your thought on this, because this was going to be something that I brought up anyway. And we will get to some of the goals that we conceded and what we thought about VAR's decisions on goals 2 and 3, which arguably, dictate the way the game looks at halftime. Gilmour and Hinshelwood needed 10 to help them out, per Arctic Temper. It was playing 2 strikers, which compounded the issue, in my opinion. I 100% agree with him. I think we've hung our hat on the never want to see Ferguson Welbeck aisle, and I think we're actually probably more on the case if we don't want to see 2 strikers start. 4-4-2 is not a formation that suits this De Zerbi style, and I think it was compounded by the substitution for João Pedro at halftime, who, for me personally, because I know I ask your opinions a lot and then don't even give my own. So I think Pedro needs to be one of the first names on the team sheet. He is connecting that front line to the midfield better than any player I've seen. He makes everything happen. He was the guy against Athens. He was unreal. He was excellent from the minute he came on yesterday. His defensive work against Chelsea was second to none. He was up there near the top with tackles completed, interceptions. He is doing everything for this team. He is doing exactly what Watford fans said he was doing at Championship level, and he's doing it comfortably against some of the best teams in the Premier League. And to me, I think he should be one of the first names on the team sheet just as much as anybody else at this point. Craig, what are your thoughts on deciding to go with 2 strikers that aren't dropping back as much? And do you feel the same way? And thoughts on Pedro in general really would be good.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you completely. The 2 strikers doesn't work. I don't. Sometimes there's method to the madness, right, of De Zerbi, and you can kind of see it, and you go, right, that kind of didn't work, but I understand what you're trying to do there. The 2 striker thing with them both dropping deep, I completely get that. But against that sort of press, and we'll give credit to Villa in due course, but it just doesn't work for me, especially with the 2 wide players and the 2 dropping in. I get the concept, it just isn't working or isn't clicking with the personnel that you have. So with that, I completely agree. João Pedro needs to be one of the first on the team sheet, has to play in that 10 role. I don't want to see him as that striker or in that sort of Ferguson role. I want to see him as part of that 3. And similar to what the chat is saying with James, is having someone that is a little bit more physical. You have to remember João Pedro is 6'1". He can put himself about a little bit. In a defense or a central midfield that might need some physicality there or a little bit of nastiness, shall we say. If you're not going to have Belibra, there needs to be João Pedro there. There needs to be someone to be doing that work. So, and it's not a knock on Gilmour and Hinshelwood. I don't want to be crystal clear on that. I thought they were okay. There was overrun by an Aston Villa midfield 3 that is honestly very good. It pains me to say, but that it's a very physical 3 of the midfield, and we decided to put 2 up against the 3, and we got completely overran. That's not the fault of Gilmour and Hinshelwood. I just think we got it wrong tactically. So yeah, Pedro needs to be in there. He needs to be on for penalties too, for me. So I know I sat on here last week and said he needs a couple more. You can't take the penalties if you're not on the pitch either. So I do want to see him in that 10 role, and I do want to see him step up. He has that knack for winning free kicks and penalties that we're kind of missing without him too. So he brings a lot to the table that we're sort of missing out on when we rotate. I know he's 21, but he's got it, and he needs to be on. So a midfield three of Baleba, Gilmour, and Pedro just makes me very happy to even think about. And we need that to sort of manifest sooner rather than later. But we'll see. If Baleba's not ready, then Pedro needs to be on at the minimum for that physicality aspect.
Yeah, just to link them up would be nice. I mean, yeah. Fati and Pedro had almost double the amount of touches between them than Ferguson and Welbeck did in the first half. They both got given 45 minutes, right? One of them, they were almost twice as involved and got a goal and an assist from their efforts. Let's talk about the first couple of goals. Because between 0 minutes and 14, Albion looked the much better side for the most part. Dominated the ball. We're creating a couple of nice looking chances. Not going to talk about XG because we lost 6-1. And Aston Villa's XG was 1.6, ours 1.7. So if you ever need to wonder how accurate XG is sometimes compared to the eye tests, we love talking about this every now and again. Yesterday was absolute bollocks, right? XG is just a joke. Like, it makes no sense in yesterday's game. We all watched it. I was in the stands. Other people were able to watch it from all around the world in every angle possible. We were outclassed finishing ability-wise by far. 1.7 to 1.6 is not in any way an accurate representation of what was happened yesterday. Inevitably, we're caught on the break. Ollie Watkins puts them 1-0 up. Okay, fine. And then what proceeded to be the next 10 minutes of just diabolical football unfolded before us. Goals 2 and 3. I'll just take your opinion on both at the same time. And, you know, Robin, we'll start with you, and Craig, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too. Prior to you hopping on, Robin, we actually kicked off the show talking about Liverpool Spurs because of the level of diabolical VAR decisions that went on yesterday to like just astounding levels. What were your thoughts on those two goals? Should we have called the goal back for the foul on Solly March? At what point is too far? And then was it offside? Was he impeding Steele's vision? Should that have been an offside? What are your thoughts?
You shouldn't even need to call it back. It's just a foul, right? The referee just needs to give that as a foul in the moment because he's just battered him. It's just a foul. And yeah, I think we're obviously looking at it with blue and white specs on, but for incidents like that, I try really hard to be objective about it. And they did show an angle on the BT or TNT coverage, whatever it's called these days, that pretty clearly showed that if you're Jason Steele, it's basically in your eye line. Whether it's directly standing in front of him doesn't really matter. It's enough in his eye line that it makes a difference. If you are interfering with play, it should be offside, right?
I'd fully expect that to go against us. And I think when you're talking about being objective and bits and pieces, what I try and do is just twist it the other way. And that if we had scored that goal, would it have been disallowed against us? And it's probably a yes, right? You know, like you said, Robin, you are interfering with play to an extent, you know, whether it's directly or indirectly. And again, there's this gray area with a automated technology system and subpar refereeing. But you know, are you influencing the game in any way by being there? And the answer to that question is yes. It's just, you know, what is the level of interference there? So I would fully expect it to go against us. Therefore, I would expect it to be given for us. It's a shame. The Solly March one is a foul, right? Yeah, no need to call it back. Just call it there. Subpar refereeing and officiating as normal. The passage of play led to the goal. Again, I would expect that to be given against us. Therefore, I would expect it for us if it happened to us. But two VAR incidents that didn't go our way And I want to preface it by we would have lost this game anyway, right? If those two did get called for us and they were correct and we were happy with those two decisions, we still would have lost this damn game. So I'm not saying that would have influenced anything in the grand scheme of things, but the game would have maybe shaped out slightly differently. We made a little bit more hope, but you know,
doesn't help, does it?
It's VAR, right? I mean,
Stuart Atwell again, isn't it? I feel like Stuart Atwell has done us over a few times from VAR.
Who was the ref for the Spurs game? Do we know? That's always the gold standard, right? Of like who was the referee for the and on VAR for the Tottenham away game, because that's always
I think
worst.
Atwell was on. Let me look it up actually. I've got a feeling it might have been Atwell on VAR for that. Someone will probably correct me, but I'm going to look now.
So obviously we go in at half-time 3-0 down, and substitutions were made. Pedro, Fati and Lamptey on for Welbeck, Ferguson and Estepinian. Estepinian is not having the best of times, is he, currently? If there's ever a need for a left-back, it is currently right now to give the guy a rest, it feels like. Craig, are you starting Estepinian in Marseille? Or are you like what are you and if you're not, like, are you playing Lamptey there? Like what are your thoughts on
I think
Estepinian?
I think you're playing him, right? Because you don't really have a choice. And I think we spoke about this when the transfer window was open, is that we needed some form of fullback coverage. Not just to avoid complacency, but also just to give people a rest. You're trying to chop and change 3 times a week. You're playing 3 games a week. You're making 6 changes here, 9 changes here. But the one consistent is that left back role, because we haven't got anyone else to play it. You can look to the Lamptey game and against United, and you say, yeah, he did really well. That's not his natural position, and you can't expect Lamptey to play there with the consistency that we saw of United. I don't think you play him against Marseille. I think you bring Lamptey in the game after. I mean, you got Liverpool. This is a really torrid run, so it doesn't really matter. But the fact remains is that we did not get left back coverage, and we are going to struggle from it. Do I play Estepinian? Yes. It doesn't matter which game, because we haven't really got anyone else.
I thought Robin was about to give us the referee verdict there. He teased me. Yeah, as you say, it's not nice, is it, going forward? Marseille away, Liverpool at home, City away, Ajax at home as our next 4. De Zerbi has gone on record with his classic, you will see a different Brighton on Thursday. You probably really freaking hope so, Robin, don't you, after the trip you're making?
Yeah, I do, actually. I'll be slightly irritated if we get battered, having gone all the way to Marseille. If I make it into the ground in one piece, obviously. Yeah, I mean, first of all, the referee for the Spurs game was Stuart Atwell.
Say no more, fam. Say no more.
The VAR was Michael Salisbury, and it was obviously it was one of our many Howard Webb apologies. So yeah, Stuart Atwell just seems to just not be very good at his job, to be quite frank about it. In terms of Thursday night, yeah, I think Estepinian's got to start. I think Ansu Fati's probably got to start. I think you've got to lump in some European experience. I know he's only 20, but, as we said in the last pod, he's got arguably, the most amount of recent European experience for us. And you want João Pedro to play. You hope that, I'd like to see Belieber play, to be honest. If he'll have had 8 days off by then, I'd certainly like to see him start. And if you can get an hour out of him or 70 minutes again out of him, that would be ideal. But yeah, I think Estepinian's got to start. I think, to be honest, they probably go with, hopefully they go with Verbruggen and hopefully they go with Van Hecke. I'd go with Veltman again. I'd go with Estepinian. Not massively wholesale changes. I think you're really looking at 4 probably. So Verbruggen for Steele, Van Hecke for Webster, Belieber for Hinchelwood, and João Pedro for Welbeck. And potentially, I don't know where you shoehorn Ansu Fati in. I guess maybe ahead of March, but so probably not. Maybe not Ansu Fati. So maybe 4 changes, but yeah, I hope we do. I hope we do. I hope we do put on a better display. I mean, they are also leaking goals as well. I think they lost 3-2 last night in the end, but it was 2-2 after about 20 minutes. And I think the player they got from Sheffield United over the summer, Ndiaye, he scored 1, assisted 1, and then went off injured. So that would be very handy if he's not fit for next Thursday. I'm also almost looking forward more to the prospect of De Zerbi against Gattuso in the dugout, because that, given the rest of the atmosphere around the whole game, that has the potential to be box office in itself. But yeah, I think we will see something different. Well, at least we hope we see something different.
Well, per De Zerbi, we will. And he doesn't often get that wrong when he makes those kind of bold statements. We ruined Arsenal's entire Premier League dream last time he said that. So we'll see how that goes for him. Obviously, Fati gets his first goal for the Albion. Good stuff. Not sure why VAR looked at that one for as long as they did. And we watched, once again, Ezri Konsa got booked on 57 minutes. And 10 minutes later, just before the goal, should have been down to 10 men. Again, we're having to have a conversation around VAR because obviously it's a yellow card offense, right? Like we see those every day. Both players are given a yellow. Everyone goes on with their lives. However, this would cause it to then be a sending off for one of those players. And we're already seeing the thing that they didn't want to upset the apple cart and cause any drama or anything like that. So they didn't want to do that. Again, what are we doing here? To me, that's like a clear second yellow for Konsa. And don't get me wrong, like whoever's involved on the Albion side should be given a yellow as well. But this level of inconsistency, in my words out, is just outrageous, isn't it? Like it's just mental.
Yeah, the ref's absolutely bottled it, isn't he? Like in being able to dish out the deserved punishment. And like I said, if this was the other way around, you'd fully expect the second yellow to be given to us, and you would accept that and go, you can't do that. It's obviously a yellow card. But this whole orange nature of a second yellow needs to go away.
It does.
So it's just a very weird concept that, like you said, you don't want to tip the apple cart and you don't want to make people mad or whatever, but you're also dishing out yellow cards like hot dinners for dissent and waving imaginary cards about. So you can wave an imaginary card and get the yellow for yourself, but you can grab someone by the collar and give them a little shove and you're absolutely fine because you already have one for dissent. So it's such a weird, again, we're talking about poor officiating. It's sort of I feel like we default to this, to be honest, on a weekly basis.
It is.
But it is consistency, isn't it?
It winds me up. It's a slight tangent, but there's two things that wind me up unbelievably. In fact, most things wind me up, but two things wind me up more than other things. That the concept of it's a foul anywhere else on the pitch. I know we didn't have that yesterday, but when people go, oh, it's a foul anywhere else on the pitch. So then why is it not a foul in the penalty box? Like, it's just bollocks. It makes no sense. Like, get out. The second thing is, oh, that's a yellow card if he didn't already have a yellow card, which is just similar levels of bollocks, isn't it? It's like going, oh, we're going to disallow that. Like, they don't need another goal. They're already 1-0 up. Let's not be lenient about this. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's absolute nonsense. Like, you're there to make a decision based on the tackle or the incident itself. Nothing else. Literally everything else in that scenario is irrelevant. The venue, the state of the game, the atmosphere, the weather, you name some other external factor and it's irrelevant. It's whether that tackle or incident is worthy of a yellow card. Yes or no. If the player already happens to have a yellow card, then so be it. But it's bollocks and I hate it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm hoping that the last 49 minutes of conversation, for those listening, if there are any of you listening that have been in a minor meltdown this weekend, has helped mellow you out a little bit. And James in the chat has just said that you would have to back De Zerbi to steer us safely out of these rough waters. And I think that Tony Bloom absolutely does. And I think fans in general do. And I would just advise not to get too wound up by people online with hot takes because I fall into that trap all the time when idiots say things.
I mean,
that are stupid.
we're not even in rough waters, right?
No, not
Like,
at all.
In my book, we're a long way. We are a long way away from rough waters, right? There's a little wave in the distance, if we're going to torture that analogy. Yeah, I mean, look, strip everything back. We've won 5 of our first 7. And if you go back to the beginning of the season, we talked about it. We said October is going to be a brutal run, so we need to get some points on the board early. Like, who's not, like, at the beginning of the season, if you're offered 5 wins in your first 7, we'd have all taken that, right?
Absolutely.
I think anyone would have taken that, right? Regardless of
So, and yeah, we're out of the Carabao Cup, but, so what? Like, of all the competitions we're involved in, that's the one that can get in the bin the fastest. So I'm happy with, we're not happy with that, but I'm not particularly fussed about it. And, to not bang on about it, we're in Europe. So it's like, I know you get a lot of people, not a lot, but a fair chunk of people on X or whatever Twitter is these days, sort of going off on one with these random hot takes. It's like, let's strip it back and go, we are still in a position that we've never been in before. We probably wouldn't realistically have dreamed of being in at any given point in the club's history. And we're doing it with basically a bottom 6 budget. I mean, it's like it's splitting hairs and people getting really wound up about it. So yeah, I'm not having it.
Yeah, it's odd.
Bite me in the comments. I'm not having it.
Well, it's odd, isn't it? Because and it comes from the fact that Andy Naylor is posting stuff on there, and you've got Brighton fans coming to him like absolutely losing their shit, talking about Villa being on fire and Brighton being like in free fall, and like they're both in Europe. Well, like Villa's form in their last 6 is loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. Our form is win, win, loss, win, loss, loss. So what qualifies on fire and what qualifies as not on fire? Like, it's just, but people need to just chill out.
Yeah,
like,
and like,
if you're upset now, wait until we've finished with Marseille, Ajax, City, and Liverpool, because you're like, this is really what we want to be.
It's a weird game to get. Obviously, the nature of the scoreline doesn't help, but Villa had won 9 home games in a row, right? Like, it's not like we did that standard Albion thing that we used to do, which is teams that hadn't won for ages, we would rock up and roll over nicely and give them a really easy 2-0 win. Like, we're a long way from that scenario. This is a really good team who have spent a shit ton of money, have a manager who is arguably, of all the managers operating in world football, he is up there in terms of achievements, right? Like, he's won the Europa League, 4 or 5 times, something like that. This is a really top quality manager with a team that has spent a lot of money and has bought really well. Like, as much as I don't want to lose 6-1 to anyone, and they are a really good team and they will be knocking on the door of the top 4 this year. And Ollie Watkins not really talked in that detail about it. I mean, other than Harry Kane, like, there is not a better English striker out there, certainly in terms of natural finishing ability and being in the right place at the right time. They've got Diaby, who looked really good. They spent 50 million on him. Like, they are another club who are operating in a different financial stratosphere to what we're operating in. And I know that it can sound like a bit of a broken record, and it can sound like the excuse for, whenever we get turned over in these kind of games. But if you strip it back, what we are achieving on a bottom 6 budget in Europe for the first time, with a lot of players who have not played in Europe before, with a manager who has not had to juggle that many competitions in this country at the same time, we are still sitting pretty. And we knew,
in any country though, like, De Zerbi hasn't ever managed in Europe. Like, he had 2 games in the Champions League under Shakhtar before everything went to shit. Like, he said himself, like, he's never really experienced the European season because the Russians ruined it for him. So, like, he's never really had that experience. He's been really clear from the start that, like, this is going to be a learning curve for him too. It doesn't help that he's now in the Premier League as well. It's not like he's rolling over the Ukrainian division at the same time. Like, it's a little bit of a different kettle of fish. Watkins, unbelievable. Like, such a good striker. He's been good for years. I absolutely hate saying I told you so to all those absolute dickheads online saying that Watkins was crap when I said I wish we'd signed him, because he hasn't been crap since they signed him, and he's just getting better. And like you say, like outside of Harry Kane, like he's the next guy up in an England squad that is Southgate-less, frankly, because with him I don't care. But like to me, like Watkins is just unbelievably talented, and he always scores against us as well. The absolute
like
he
four,
can't help himself.
like 4 Premier League games in a row or something. It's basically him and Harry Kane who always seem to score against us.
They've got such a good team, haven't they?
They have.
And I think it's you've got Ollie Watkins, but I'll talk to their midfield again. It's for gushing over Villa, Christ alive. But just in that physical element of that midfield three with McGinn and Douglas Luiz, like it's a very good pairing there, and they're both very. They both just run for days and are able to do that press on us, and half of it was us not getting going. We had a good 14 minutes. Apart from that, we were a shambles. But also, I thought their press was as good as you're going to see against us for a while. And I thought that their midfield sort of overran us. It wasn't going to be hard with Hinshelwood and Gilmore, but you have to beat what's put in front of you, and they did it very well. So, like you said, very good team, an out-and-out striker that scores a bunch of goals, always scores against us. They're a bogey team of ours, big time. I think I look back and we've beaten them once in the last God knows how many years. So
that was it. That's once. We beat them in that COVID season. And the last time we beat them away from home was a neutral ground in the Charity Shield in 1910.
There you go.
So like we've never won at Villa Park when there's been a crowd, like for a start. So you want to talk about bogey teams. It's like,
yeah.
I'm so over it. Like, I know it's a 6-1 win and we shouldn't just gloss over it, but like, I am so over it. I barely think about it. Let's just move on.
Yeah, let's talk about a little bit about the game against Marseille, because obviously we aren't following Marseille particularly well. They are sat 10th in the top division in France, of course. Played 7, won 2, drawn 3, lost 2. Everybody is very, very well aware of what's going on behind the scenes, or rather not even behind now, because they're just mental. We've had Gattuso just come in as their new manager. Inevitably, there will be the worry of a new manager bounce coming in there. Marseille, however, do have some players that we will all recognise more so than the Athens side. Ismaila Sarr from Watford is a player that is making a fair amount of starts for Marseille. We've got Mbemba of Newcastle fame back in the day playing for Marseille. We've obviously got Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang in the side as well. So we have Renan Lodi, who caused us problems at Forest late last year. We've got Vitinha, we've got Jonathan Klaus, who's a good player. We've got Kondogbia. We've got plenty of players who are not bad at all. And obviously, we've also got Guendouzi, everyone's favourite central defensive midfielder from Arsenal. This is not going to be an easy fixture, right? Like, this is going to be going into the heartland of an incredibly hostile European footballing environment. I think it was James in the chat wishing you well, Robin, in all seriousness, with what you're about to be walking into. My sister's also going, which is something I feel fabulous about, because she's an absolute idiot. But how are we feeling against Marseille? Because this is a group that's on the brink, right? Like, we are very much still in with a chance here. It's only one game, but if we lose in Marseille, we have a little bit of a rougher time of things, don't we? Because we're then quite a fair few points behind. And Marseille and Ajax are both sitting on 1 point. What, are you hoping for a win? Do you think we can? Like, what are your thoughts on this game in Europe on Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, we're good enough to win. Like, we've qualified for the competition on merit. We've added some good quality. They are obviously struggling. I don't think they've won since August, which, going back to that, what we said a minute ago, is we tend to, when teams haven't won for ages, we tend to be the obliging team to rock up and just hand them a win. In all seriousness, I have zero idea what to expect in terms of the game, because, we've never played a European away game for a start. So we have no frame of reference to base this on whatsoever. You know, there was a time, probably not under De Zerbi, probably under Potter, where, you know, we weren't so good when we rocked up to away grounds with quite intense atmospheres. But, you know, under De Zerbi, we went to Arsenal where they, you know, really needed to win to pretty much stay in the title race, and we swept them aside pretty easily. We've won twice at Man United, which again, you know, whilst not being an unbelievably kind of fervent atmosphere, is not, you know, traditionally not an easy place to go. Again, we've won at all these big grounds. We've won at Chelsea. We played really well at Liverpool. You know, so we've got a better record going into these quote hostile environments. So I don't know. I think it's one of those games where, I know we've talked about our style is basically made for being a goal in front. Like, this is a game, the first goal is really, 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 really crucial. Like, if we get a relatively early goal to go in front, then you could see us not being comfortable, but you could see us being in a much better position. So I don't know what to expect. I genuinely don't know. But to be honest, you know, I still have to pinch myself and go, we are going to go and watch the Albion play away from home in a European competition against a legitimate European powerhouse. Like, from that point of view, nothing, you know, it's a pretty good base to go from, right? You know, we're doing something that we've never done before, and we probably didn't think we ever would. Like, if we get rolled over 3-0, am I going to be annoyed? Probably a little bit, but, you know, I've travelled all the way up to Carlisle to watch us when I lived down south. You know, I've travelled all the way up to Carlisle to watch us get battered 3-0. So, you know, it's nothing new. It'll just be in a slightly bigger and warmer place.
Yeah, their starting 11 yesterday against Monaco, like you say, they lost 3-2. They played 4-3-3. I'm going to murder some pronunciations here, so apologies. But we have Pau Lopez in goal. We have Murillo on the left, and Mbemba and Gigo in the middle, and Klaus on the right. And then in their midfield three, they had Veretout, Rongier, and Unai. I don't know. And then they had Undai, as you say, who went off hurt, who had a blinder of a game before going off hurt. Aubameyang up top, and Correa as well on the left-hand side. There's definitely some recognizable names there. They dominated possession for the most part, and were arguably the better side. Craig, thoughts on this one? Obviously, as Robin said, of course we can win. We can win every game in this competition, all the way to the final. Like, we're there for a reason, right? Like, we are beating the best teams in the world in our own division. We can do it. But what are your thoughts on this one prior to the big game?
I think Robin's right. The first goal is integral, and I think the team that scores first probably wins the game, right? But I'm worried about being starstruck again and just playing in this competition. It's intimidating for fans to go to Marseille. I can only imagine what it's going to be like for the squad and them rocking up and trying to play. So yeah, I'm worried about it. It sounds horrible to say for the Zerbi team, but just the mentality and being able to be mentally strong and go there and control the game. If we're able to do that, if we're able to dominate the ball, get the fans a little bit restless, get them on the back, and they're a volatile team at the best of times. So being able to use that to our advantage by just choking them and taking the ball and just keeping it is probably our best chance. And luckily, we're actually quite good at that. So it kind of plays quite well if you want to be positive. The other half of my brain is going, you go 1-0 down and you probably don't have a chance. So it could go either way. We're going to see changes. We're going to see us playing on a Thursday night again. It's going to be pretty damn magic, I'm sure. But yeah, it could go either way. I'm expecting us to just go there, grab possession, make it really frustrating for them, and lure them into the trap.
I think it comes back to what we hoped, which, well, you know, after the Athens game, we thought, you know, would the style of Marseille and Ajax, I know you're going to talk about this comment in a second, would the style of Marseille and Ajax suit us better in terms of a team that's going to be more on the front foot, is going to want to try and dominate possession? It's basically going to try and match us, right? Rather than playing the classic kind of counter-attacking style. I don't know a huge amount about Marseille's style of play. Obviously, Gattuso is very new. into the job, so potentially they don't know what their new style of play necessarily is going to be like. But you can't imagine them at home in a European game wanting to sit back and be on the counter attack. Like, it naturally follows. Like, you think how their fans are and the whole atmosphere around the place, you'd imagine that the expectation level is that they go out and try and impose themselves on the opposition. And that has the potential, if they get it slightly wrong, that has the potential to suit us better than it did against Athens. So I think there's a few positive points to take. But yeah, it's a crucial team selection. Like, this is one where, like, we do not want any of De Zerbi's slightly left field selections, right? We want a solid selection. We want the spine of the team to be very strong. I know that was the worry against Chelsea, was that, you were kind of missing a spine throughout. Ferguson's form is a bit of a worry. I know that he's been ill. He hasn't really looked on it for the last couple of games, where he's had 45 minutes in each game, basically, hasn't he? I think. Yeah. It's the kind of game where we need him to be like he was against Newcastle, which is that, basically taking every chance that pops up. But yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic. I'll always be optimistic going into a game. We've definitely got the ability to do it. But yeah, I'm just the logistics of getting there and actually getting into the ground and all sorts are beginning to bother me slightly. Thankfully, this is very boring for everybody else other than me, but I'm still going to go with it. Originally, when the club announced all the details, they said that you had to collect your ticket by the cutoff point was going to be 3 hours before kickoff, so that would be 3:45 local time. I'm only getting into Marseille at like 1:45, so I was massively stressing about getting from the airport into the ground, to get the ticket collection. But they've moved that until an hour and a half before kickoff now, so a bit more chilled about that. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine is a Spurs fan who went to watch them when they had Marseille, I think either last year or the year before. They had them in the group stage of the Champions League. And yeah, his advice was, when you fly into Marseille, he's like, don't get public transport from the airport into the city centre, especially on a match day, because they have spotters on all the trains looking for away fans, is what I was told. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. So my plan is to very much get a taxi or an Uber from the airport to collect my ticket. Originally, I thought it was a good idea to book a hotel right next to the stadium, but that has transpired to not necessarily be the most ideal situation, because in theory you go, that's brilliant, it's right by the stadium, it's fine. But the only way, like, the entrance to the away end is underground, hence why they bus you in. So it's not going to be super easy to get from there to the hotel. So I think I'm going to have to go back into the centre of Marseille to then get a taxi back out to the ground. But anyway, that's very boring for everybody other than me. But yeah, it's going to be good. I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be an interesting challenge. I know, we've still sold, I know we didn't quite sell out, but, we're taking 3,000 plus to Marseille, which is it's a good effort.
Well, I think that's, to me, I don't find that boring at all. Like, I don't know about you, Craig, but like, there are 3,000 of you going. There are 300,000 that want to go, right? Like, that would, on other circumstances, go. So, like, for those listening, like, whether you're in the States, Japan, China, Malaysia, wherever you're listening from, like, the amount of map that's lit up these days that listen to this show is just insane. Like, everybody wants to hear these things, I think, because like they're not going to be able to live that experience, right? Like, and there's an awful lot that wish they could go to Amsterdam in a couple of weeks and they're not going to be able to go either, right?
Like, can we move on to that quickly? Like, I am.
Yeah, let's touch on that. Let's touch on that at the end here as our last thing. So
I'm
for those traveling to Marseille.
I'm absolutely not. I might do, like, I'm certainly not doing one until I'm in the ground. Like, I might take a little video or something in the ground, but I'm not going to be wandering around somewhere in Marseille talking very obvious English, unless I can master French in the next 96 hours, whatever it is. No, I'm not going to do that. As
Well, for
disappointing
those
as that
that are
is.
traveling to Marseille, be safe. Obviously, follow all instructions given. You'll be fine. I'm sure as long as you follow what you're told. There will be idiots who think they don't have to follow it, and frankly, God be with them. Like, I don't care. Like, if that's what you want to do, do it. Ajax away and Athens away, which will be shortly going up on sale at the end of this month, which may be a similar bin fest, but Ajax is set to be the biggest one. So they have the 3 bands, right? And it was never going to get past season ticket holders regardless. And clearly it's not going to even get to my level of season ticket holder either, the peasant season ticket holder. So we've had, I believe, as of last count, there's about 350 tickets left for Ajax away. And we are just about opening the second band at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Robin, you are in that second band by just about. How, and obviously you wanting to go. So how are you feeling about tomorrow? You've been through this already. You've got Taylor Swift tickets for the Eras tour. We know how difficult that can be. I am going to genuinely say this is going to be harder.
100%.
I mean, you're going to have another 3,000-4,000 people trying to get 300 tickets. What's your prep look like? What's your research look like? How are you feeling?
My first point is that the cutoff was 265 to guarantee a ticket, and I have 260. So I've been irritated. So I'm coming from a place of irritation straight away. Like you say, whichever way they did it, it was never going to be, it's never going to please everybody. In terms of my prep, I think I've done more. I think I've thought about this from more angles and done more planning than I did for my own wedding. I think it's fair to say. I have I'm trying to buy tickets for a couple of other people that's sort of in the group as well. So there are going to be 3 of us trying and buy tickets. We've enlisted the help of a 4th. So Josh Wedgie is going to help us try and get some tickets. So we've got all sorts of scenarios going on. There used to be, and this is going to piss people off if it works, and I'm just not going to apologize if it works. I'm absolutely taking it. But it's controversial. There was a school of thought at some point when you had these games where there were different tiers, that you could get somebody in tier 1 to log in before 9 o'clock and basically put 3 tickets in their basket, wait until it hits 9 o'clock, and then allocate them to your tier 2 friends, right? Which is very controversial. If you're in that scenario and it benefits you, absolutely dreamy, not apologizing whatsoever. But I think the club became quite wise to that. And there's now, I believe they kind of either stop people adding tickets in the 15 minutes before the window goes on sale, or they flush the ticketing system. Either way. So one of us is going to try, Wedge is going to try that just in case it slips through. But other than that, it's a straight bun fight. I mean, it really depends. When you hit 9 o'clock, you just get allocated a random position in the queue. So it's that allocate. It's basically that is going to be the crucial bit. If you get allocated a position in the queue in the first couple of 100, then you're in. If you don't, you're not. So, I mean, you can do all the preparation you want, but it comes down to that, to that. And, in terms of if you manage to get in, it's my advice to anyone. I don't know why I'm doing this because, we're all competing against each other, but in the spirit of friendliness, my advice to everyone would be, if you do get through, don't faff around trying to choose individual seats. Just go for best available. Just click best available and just see what you get. By the time you try and faff around with a seat map to try and select something, you're done. So in the spirit of total openness and fairness, that would be my advice would be to go for best available. But yeah, it's I've been pacing the room like some sort of Looney Tunes character since Friday evening. We'll just see where we get to.
Well, I wish you luck. Everybody who's going to be trying tomorrow morning, I wish you luck. I'm glad I don't have to do this shit again. I was stressed enough with stupid Taylor Swift concert tickets, let alone actually going to watch the Albion and Ajax. I would just have a meltdown. So good luck, everybody who's going to try tomorrow morning. Genuinely, I really hope that you get them. Obviously, not all of you will, because it's really... I
mean, on a serious note, the thing we don't know is we don't know how many people are actually in tier 2.
Right.
I've seen various theories. Like I've seen a lot of people say it's going to be in the thousands because of, just sort of pure maths. But actually, what you've got to layer on top of that is the number of people that pre-registered. That's an unknown. We don't know. The lowest that I heard it was given, there was essentially someone who forgot to pre-register, right? Which was a bit of a nightmare, and spoke to the ticket office to try and get themselves in, to no avail, obviously, because process. And the figure that they were given was something.
Well, not always, because my sister got tickets to Marseille despite not being pre-registered.
Yeah,
She
but that was
them and they let her in
sell,
because exactly. So it depends. They'll allow process for cash.
I was told the lowest it could be was and it might be garbled, that I was told that potentially there's 3,000 across the first 2 tiers only. And if that's correct, then you're potentially looking at 1,000 people for 350 tickets. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, it's several thousand going for 350 tickets. So I don't know.
Don't envy you.
In with a chance.
Any of you.
In with a chance is
got to be in it to win it.
But it's one of those things. You go. I still fall back to if I don't get tickets, I've already booked accommodation and all that, so I'll go anyway. But it's still some of us will still be going to see the Albion play away at Ajax, which is mental.
And we're gonna fill that side of the stadium, right? Like we're gonna fill it, which is awesome. I mean, collectively we are doing, the royal we are doing something that we've never done before. Yeah, hopefully I'll be one of those doing Athens, hopefully, but we'll see. I'm going to definitely try for that one. I feel more optimistic now. There's more people gone for Ajax simply because the sheer volume of people. If we continue to be really shit in October as well, I'm well happy in a way, in a really messed up way. I'll be really happy yesterday, because then I'll defo get Athens tickets because everyone will be mardy.
If a 6-1, if Villa battering a 6-1 even puts 50 people off trying to buy Ajax tickets, then that's a win.
All right, let's wrap, boys. This is just going to be another hour of hoping and praying for Ryan. He's just going to form a prayer circle. We would love you to send us any videos and any kind of just at the end of the game, a voice note of in the moment. So you're not thinking about you're just telling us how it was, how the whole trip went. It doesn't matter whether it's 1 minute or 5 or 20, just go for it. Give us your thoughts on it. We'd love to hear it from someone who was there in the moment and not talking about it 4 days after. It's always nice. So we'll, if we get that, we're able to get that from yourself, given the circumstances of the game. That would be great. And we'll share it on socials for everyone else to enjoy as well. And we will be back maybe Thursday, definitely next weekend, regardless. And again, let's just enjoy it. Yes, it was a horrible week. Dicked by Villa, beaten by Chelsea in what was a bit of a piss about game anyway, really, wasn't it? But it doesn't stop. We've got Marseille away and Liverpool at home next. So let's just enjoy it, get into it, and we'll speak again next week.
Love it. Thanks all.
Cheers.